पहली बार बिहार में कांग्रेस की मेजॉरिटी टूटी थी।
या ये सोचा है कि ट्रंप के टैरिफ्स एक्चुअली यूएस कंज्यूमर्स पे करते हैं, चाइना नहीं।
वेलकम दोस्तों, आज हम करने वाले हैं एक जबरदस्त सुपर डिटेल्ड एनालिसिस ऑफ द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट न्यूज स्निपेट्स फ्रॉम दिस एंटायर मंथ ऑफ नवंबर।
बेसिकली ये आपके एग्जाम्स के लिए परफेक्टली इन्फॉर्म्ड होने का अल्टीमेट शॉर्टकट है।
सो अगर आप तैयार हैं तो ट्रांसफॉर्म योर करंट अफेयर्स प्रेप, तो जल्दी से लाइक अभी, सब्सक्राइब बटन दबा दीजिए एंड लेट्स गेट स्टार्टेड ऑन दिस मैसिव लर्निंग मैराथन।
एब्सोल्युटली, आज के लर्निंग मैप में वी हैव अ लॉट टू कवर। हम बिहार की पॉलिटिकल हिस्ट्री से शुरू करेंगे, फिर डाइव करेंगे इनटू द कॉम्प्लेक्स वर्ल्ड ऑफ एमजी नरेगास लीगल बैटल्स।
हम यूएस चाइना ट्रेड वॉर्स को अनपैक करेंगे, जीडीपी कॉन्सेप्ट्स को डिकोड करेंगे और इंडिया में यूरिया स्कैर्सिटी को समझेंगे।
बिल्कुल। फिर क्लाउड सीडिंग से लेकर यूएस सेनेट के फिलिबस्टर तक। विल आल्सो कवर क्रूशियल सुप्रीम कोर्ट जजमेंट्स, global conflicts from Sudan to Ukraine, and amazing developments in science, tech, and environment.
Basically, we are covering everything from November 1 to 29, snippet by snippet.
So let's begin this deep exploration.
चलो, let's jump right in. हमारा पहला स्निपेट है November 1st से।
Snippet 1. End of Congress dominance in Bihar, 1967.
Broad micro theme, Indian political history.
Okay, तो चलिए स्टेज सेट करते हैं। इंडिपेंडेंस के बाद पहले 2 दशकों तक कांग्रेस पार्टी इंडियन पॉलिटिक्स में मतलब एक अनस्टॉपेबल फोर्स थी।
और बिहार भी नो एक्सेप्शन था।
Exactly, but 1967 ने सब कुछ बदल दिया। For the first time, the Congress party lost its majority in the Bihar State Assembly. ये एक मैसिव पॉलिटिकल शिफ्ट था।
इसके लिए मेरे पास एक बहुत अच्छी एनालॉजी है।
बताइए।
और फिर एक साल सब स्मॉलर हाउसेस मिलकर एक कोalition बनाते हैं और उसे हरा देते हैं।
Perfect analogy. That's exactly what happened in Bihar's politics.
तो इसकी कोर डिटेल्स क्या हैं?
Let's break down the content. इंट्रोडक्शन तो सिंपल है। कांग्रेस की इनविंसिबिलिटी का मिथ 1967 में टूट गया। अब कोर लॉजिक। बिहार के पहले नॉन कांग्रेस चीफ मिनिस्टर थे महामाया प्रसाद सिन्हा।
अच्छा।
उनकी पार्टी का नाम था जन क्रांति दल। उन्होंने वेरियस नॉन कांग्रेस पार्टीज की एक कोलिशन गवर्नमेंट बनाई और इस कोलिशन का नाम था संयुक्ता विधायक दल।
ये नाम एग्जाम के लिए इंपॉर्टेंट है, याद रखना होगा।
बिल्कुल। और इसी गवर्नमेंट में की फिगर थे बीपी मंडल, राइट?
हाँ, जो बाद में मंडल कमीशन के लिए फेमस हुए।
करेक्ट। वो हेल्थ मिनिस्टर थे, बट ही रिजाइन टू फॉर्म हिज ओन पार्टी, द शोषित दल।
और उस टाइम एक बहुत पावरफुल सोशल करंट भी बिल्डअप हो रहा था।
राइट, द संयुक्त सोशलिस्ट पार्टी या एसएसपी का एक रेवोल्यूशनरी स्लोगन था, पिछले पावें साह में साथ।
जिसका मतलब था कि ओबीसीज, द बैकवर्ड क्लासेस, को 60% रिप्रेजेंटेशन मिलना चाहिए।
हाँ, और इसने बिहार की सोशल डायनामिक्स को कंप्लीटली चेंज कर दिया। So what's the conclusion?
The 1967 election marked the beginning of coalition politics and the rise of backward class assertion in Bihar. It was a watershed moment.
Fantastic. So for everyone listening, चलिए इसे लॉक करते हैं। Now pause and practice saying these names aloud.
महामाया प्रसाद सिन्हा, संयुक्त विधायक दल, बीपी मंडल, शोषित दल।
In short, 1967 ended the era of one-party Congress rule in Bihar and kicked off the age of coalition governments.
Perfect. अब आते हैं ग्लोबल इकोनॉमिक्स पर।
Snippet 2. Trump's tariffs and US economy.
ब्रॉड माइक्रो थीम, इंटरनेशनल इकोनॉमिक्स एंड ट्रेड।
This is a topic that's always in the news. But tariffs आखिर काम कैसे करते हैं? चलिए definition को straight करते हैं।
Okay.
A tariff is simply a tax that a domestic government imposes on imported goods. यहाँ पर the most important thing to remember is कि ये tax exporting country like China pay नहीं करती।
अच्छा, तो कौन पे करता है?
It is paid by the domestic importers, companies, and ultimately the consumers in the country that imposes the tariff. समझे?
So let's use a real life example. सोचिए आप यूएस में रहते हैं और चाइना से एक फोन ऑर्डर कर रहे हैं। अगर यूएस गवर्नमेंट उस पर 10% टैरिफ लगा दे तो फोन की फाइनल प्राइस आपके लिए एज अ यूएस कंज्यूमर 10% बढ़ जाएगी।
Right. The Chinese seller doesn't pay that tax. Simple as that.
तो इसका एक्चुअल इकोनॉमिक इम्पैक्ट क्या होता है?
Exactly. टैरिफ्स को ऑफन एक पॉलिटिकल वेपन की तरह यूज किया जाता है, बट उनका इकोनॉमिक इम्पैक्ट बहुत कॉम्प्लेक्स होता है। चलिए कंटेंट डिस्कस करते हैं।
हाँ।
येल बजट लैब ने एक स्टडी की और उनके डेटा के अनुसार ए यूएस जीडीपी ग्रोथ इज लाइकली टू सफर मोर देन चाइनाज ड्यू टू रेसिप्रोकल इफेक्ट्स।
मतलब जब चाइना भी रिटेलिएटरी टैरिफ्स लगाएगा तो यूएस एक्सपोर्ट्स को भी नुकसान होगा। इट्स अ टू वे स्ट्रीट।
बिल्कुल, और इसके लिए अ स्पेसिफिक लीगल फ्रेमवर्क है, राइट?
हाँ, यूएस ट्रेड लॉ में 2 इंपॉर्टेंट स्टैट्यूटरी टूल्स हैं, सेक्शन 301 एंड सेक्शन 332 ऑफ द ट्रेड एक्ट। इन्हीं को यूज करके प्रेसिडेंट ये टैरिफ्स इंपोज कर सकते हैं।
करेक्ट। सो द कंक्लूजन फॉर योर प्रीलिम्स इज क्लियर। टैरिफ्स आर पेड बाय इंपोर्टर्स और इनका नेट इफेक्ट डोमेस्टिक इकोनॉमी पर नेगेटिव हो सकता है बाय इंक्रीजिंग प्राइसेस फॉर कंज्यूमर्स एंड हर्टिंग एक्सपोर्टर्स।
Okay, time to rehearse this. Practice saying this key sentence aloud.
Tariffs are taxes on imports paid by domestic consumers.
In short, tariffs are a domestic tax on foreign goods and they can often harm the economy that imposes them more than the economy they target.
Next, back to India. एक very important topic है MGNREGS.
Snippet 3. Legal battle over MGNRGS in Bengal.
Broad micro theme, governance and social schemes.
The context here is the center stopping the flow of MGNRGS funds to West Bengal.
हाँ, और इसके पीछे एक specific law है. The definition lies in section 27 of the MGNREGA 2005.
अच्छा,
This section gives the central government the power to stop funds to a state if that state government fails to comply with central directives. यही सेक्शन वेस्ट बंगाल के अगेंस्ट 2022 में इन्वोक किया गया था।
So for a real life example, ये ऐसा है जैसे स्कूल प्रिंसिपल एक क्लास की स्पोर्ट्स फंडिंग रोक दें क्योंकि वो क्लास डिसिप्लिन रूल्स को कंसिस्टेंटली फॉलो नहीं कर रही।
परफेक्ट एनालॉजी। द पावर एग्जिस्ट्स बट यूजिंग इट इज अ बिग डील।
तो इसका मैकेनिज्म क्या है?
लेट्स डिस्कस द कंटेंट। the fund stoppage एक serious issue है because it directly affects the livelihood of lakhs of rural workers.
Right.
So, how does the scheme work? Let's look at the core logic, starting with the funding pattern. MG and REGS में, a center funds 100% of the wages for unskilled labor and about 75% of the material cost.
मतलब states सिर्फ एक small part of the material and administrative cost share करते हैं. ये pattern important है?
Correct. और लेबर बजट का कॉन्सेप्ट भी है.
हाँ, हर साल स्टेट्स अपनी एंटिसिपेटेड डिमांड फॉर अनस्किल्ड वर्क के बेसिस पर एक लेबर बजट बनाते हैं.
एग्जैक्टली. और फंड रिलीज के लिए इस बजट को यूनियन रूरल डेवलपमेंट मिनिस्ट्री की एम्पावर्ड कमेटी से अप्रूव करवाना जरूरी है.
So the conclusion here is that Section 27 of MG and REGS gives the center significant leverage over states.
Yes, फेडरलिज्म के एंगल से this is a major point of friction.
Okay, let's practice this. Practice saying this line aloud.
Section 27 of NGREGA allows the center to stop funds for non-compliance.
In short, the center can legally halt MG and REGS funds to a state for non-compliance, a power that has become a significant federal friction point.
अब आते हैं इकोनॉमी के बेसिक्स पर.
Snippet 4. Decoding India's projected GDP.
Broad micro theme, Indian economy basics.
ये बहुत critical point है. We often hear the target of India becoming a $5 trillion economy.
हाँ, but इसमें nominal GDP, real GDP और exchange rates का क्या चक्कर है? Let's decode it.
चलिए.
First, the definition. Nominal GDP is calculated at current market prices, so it includes inflation. Real GDP removes the effect of inflation to show the actual growth in output. But याद रखना, for global comparisons, we always use nominal GDP in US dollars.
Let's take a simple example. मान लो आपकी पॉकेट मनी पिछले साल 100 रुपए थी और इस साल 110 रुपए. Your nominal growth is 10%.
Right.
बट अगर उसी साल महंगाई यानी इन्फ्लेशन भी 8% बढ़ गई तो आपकी रियल परचेसिंग पावर सिर्फ 2% बढ़ी. That's the difference between real versus nominal.
बिल्कुल. So how does this apply to the 5 trillion goal?
Now, let's discuss the content. India's GDP growth story in rupee terms is impressive.
But dollar terms में picture थोड़ी अलग दिखती है. The core logic here is the exchange rate factor.
हाँ, GDP को डॉलर टर्म्स में कन्वर्ट करने के लिए we use the rupee dollar exchange rate. अगर रूपी डिप्रिशिएट होता है यानी कमजोर होता है
तो हमारी डॉलर जीडीपी कम हो जाएगी भले ही रूपी जीडीपी ग्रो कर रही हो. एग्जैक्टली. लेट्स लुक एट द ट्रेंड्स. फ्रॉम 2000 to 2024, India's nominal GDP compound annual growth rate or CAGR was an impressive 11.9%.
बट इसी पीरियड में रूपी डिप्रिसिएशन का CAGR 2.7% था.
Yes, and this depreciation effectively slowed down our dollar GDP growth. So the conclusion for UPSC is to understand this interplay between nominal GDP, real GDP, and the exchange rate. Rupee depreciation is a key variable in achieving our dollar-denominated economic targets.
Right. Let's get this concept clear. Pause and practice saying this.
Global GDP comparisons use nominal GDP in USD, which is affected by the exchange rate.
In short, India's dollar GDP target depends not just on its domestic economic growth, but also heavily on the stability of the rupee.
Moving on to November 3rd. First snippet.
Snippet 14. Bihar's first Dalit CM and political instability.
Broad micro theme.
Indian political history. Bihar की political history is absolutely fascinating.
हाँ, 1967 के churn के बाद, the state entered a period of great instability. The first Dalit chief minister of Bihar was Bhola Paswan Shastri, जो 1968 में ऑफिस में आए.
और उन्होंने actually 3 बहुत short term serve किए, which just shows how unstable the coalition politics of that era was.
Right. So this was a time of revolving door governments. और उनकी गवर्नमेंट के गिरने के बाद ही in 1968 बिहार में पहली बार प्रेसिडेंट्स रूल इम्पोज किया गया था.
एक और interesting fact, Satish Prasad Singh was technically Bihar's first OBC CM. But his term lasted only 5 days in 1968.
Wow. So how does this connect to the bigger picture?
This all connects directly to the Mandal Commission. That period of intense social and political churn brought leaders from backward communities to the forefront.
Right. The Mandal Commission was eventually formed in 1979 under BP Mandal during the Janata Party government.
Indian feminine Rama hai, and it famously recommended a 27% OBC quota in government jobs.
ये सब interconnected है.
So the events of the late 60s laid the groundwork for the Mandal politics of the 90s.
Got it. The seeds were sown much earlier. Okay, let's practice the names from this crucial period.
Rehearsing.
Bhola Paswan Shastri, Satish Prasad Singh, BP Mandal.
In short, the late 1960s in Bihar were defined by political instability, the rise of Dalit and OBC leadership, and key events that paved the way for the Mandal Commission.
Next up, an important agricultural issue.
Snippet 22. Looming scarcity of urea.
Broad micro theme, agriculture and economy.
This is a major structural issue in Indian agriculture.
हाँ, urea consumption has been rising steadily, reaching 35.8 million tons in 2023-24. This is despite government efforts to control its use, like Neem Coating.
Right. Neem Coating was made mandatory for all domestically produced and imported urea in 2015.
And the purpose was twofold. First, to slow down the release of nitrogen for better crop absorption efficiency.
And second, to prevent its diversion for non-agricultural uses, like in industries. But it seems the demand is still rising.
क्यों?
The core logic here is a classic case of price distortion.
अच्छा.
The MRP of urea is fixed by the government at a very low rate, around 5,360 rupees per ton.
In comparison, other PNK fertilizers like DAP and SSP are much more expensive because they are decontrolled.
Right. This huge price gap incentivizes farmers to overuse the cheaper urea, leading to soil imbalance and scarcity. So what's the solution?
IFFCO has launched Nano Urea, which is a liquid fertilizer.
Exactly. The idea is that this highly efficient liquid form will reduce the need for conventional solid urea bags.
For your exam, the key takeaway is to understand the link between a fixed MRP, the resulting price distortion, and the overuse of a particular subsidized fertilizer.
This is the root cause of the problem. Okay, let's practice the key term here. Practice saying,
Math शुरू हो जाएगा.
Neem coating slows nitrogen release and curbs industrial diversion.
In short,
Price distortion caused by heavy subsidies is the primary driver of urea overuse in India, a problem that innovations like Nano Urea aim to solve.
now for some science. This is a cool one.
Snippet 22. Cloud seeding in winters.
Broad micro theme, science and technology.
A very interesting technique but often misunderstood.
Let's start with the definition. Cloud seeding is a weather modification technique. It involves injecting clouds with substances like silver iodide or sodium chloride. These tiny particles act as condensation nuclei, which are basically surfaces that help water droplets or ice crystals form, grow, and eventually fall as rain or snow.
पर ये हर cloud के साथ नहीं हो सकता, right? There's a specific requirement.
For a real-life example, you can't just throw seeds on dry concrete and expect a plant to grow. You need fertile soil.
Similarly, for cloud seeding, you need the right kind of cloud. The requirement is for hygroscopic or warm rain clouds, which have sufficient moisture to begin with.
Precisely. और यही इसकी biggest limitation है, especially in the context of controlling air pollution in North India during winters.
Oh, right.
During the peak pollution months of November to January, the probability of finding such suitable hygroscopic clouds over Delhi is only 5 to 10%.
इसलिए pollution control के लिए इसकी effectiveness बहुत limited है.
Exactly. It's not a magical solution for Delhi's winter smog. The science just doesn't support its widespread use in that specific context and time of year.
So the conclusion is that while the technology is real, its application is highly constrained by meteorological conditions.
Time to practice the key scientific terms. Practice saying them aloud.
Silver iodide, condensation nuclei, hygroscopic clouds.
In short, cloud seeding requires specific moist cloud types that are rare in North Indian winters, making it an unreliable tool for pollution control in that region.
Let's jump to the US political system.
Snippet 33. US legislative tool, the filibuster.
Broad micro theme, international polity.
This is a unique and very powerful rule of the US Senate. Let's define it.
The filibuster is a procedural tactic that allows a minority of senators to delay or block a vote on a bill.
The key number to remember is 60. To end the debate on a bill and move it to a final vote, you need a supermajority of 60 out of 100 senators.
This effectively allows a minority of 41 senators to block almost any legislation.
So it's like saying you need 60% of the class to agree before you can even vote on a new rule. Not just a simple majority of 51%.
Right. Why does this exist?
It's because the Senate, unlike the House, traditionally allows for unlimited debate. To force an end to that debate, you need a cloture vote, which requires 60 supporters.
But there's a controversial way around it, called the nuclear option.
Yes, this is a procedure that allows the Senate to override the 60-vote rule with a simple majority of 51 votes.
It's a drastic move because it changes the Senate's rules, but it has been used for judicial nominations.
Correct. So the key difference to remember is that the US House of Representatives works on a simple majority, but the Senate's filibuster rule gives immense power to the minority party.
Okay. Let's practice the definition. Practice saying.
The filibuster is a Senate rule requiring a 60-vote supermajority to end debate on a bill.
In short, the filibuster is a powerful procedural tool in the US Senate that allows a minority party to block legislation, requiring a supermajority to overcome it.
Next up, something from the world of sports.
Snippet. Return of long throw-ins.
Broad micro theme.
Sports.
ये football, or as Americans say, soccer, से related है.
Huh? A long throw-in, which is a throw of more than 20 meters, is being used as a powerful set piece. It's almost like a corner kick, used to create goal-scoring chances directly from the sideline.
Right. And it's actually harder for the defending team to deal with than a corner kick. Why?
There are two key reasons. First, the trajectory of a long throw-in is much flatter and faster compared to the high arc of a corner kick, making it difficult for goalkeepers to judge.
And second reason, and this is crucial.
There is no offside rule for a direct throw-in.
Yes. This allows attacking players to position themselves much closer to the goal. So a simple restart of play can be turned into a major strategic weapon.
Got it. Let's practice the core logic. Practicing.
Long throw-ins are effective due to a flat trajectory and no offside rule.
In short, the long throw-in has re-emerged in football as a potent tactical weapon, often as dangerous as a corner kick or free kick near the goal.
Moving to November 4th. A very important Supreme Court judgment.
Snippet. Advocates and police summons.
Brought micro theme, Indian polity and judiciary.
This is a big win for the legal profession and for the rights of citizens.
A Supreme Court has ruled that police cannot summon lawyers to divulge privileged communications with their clients. This reinforces a very important legal principle.
So what's the legal basis for this?
This lawyer-client privilege is protected under Section 132 of the new Bharatiya Sakshya Adhiniyam, or BSA, which was formerly the Evidence Act.
It ensures that anything you tell your lawyer in confidence stays confidential.
Correct. But there are important exceptions. This privilege is denied if the communication is for an illegal purpose.
For example, if you're consulting a lawyer on how to commit a crime.
Exactly. Also, if the lawyer themselves observes a crime being committed in the course of their professional employment, the privilege does not apply.
The court also noted that such summons violate two fundamental rights. Article 19(1)(g), which is the right to practice one's profession, and Article 21, which includes the right to legal representation.
So the big takeaway is that this judgment strongly reinforces the sanctity and confidentiality of the lawyer-client relationship, which is a cornerstone of a fair justice system.
Okay, let's practice the key legal provisions. Practice saying aloud.
Section 132 of Bharatiya Sakshya Adhiniyam, Article 19(1)(g) and Article 21.
In short, the Supreme Court has protected lawyer-client privilege from police summons, except in specific cases related to illegal activities.
Next, let's look at a geography topic.
Snippet: Afghanistan earthquake vulnerability.
Broad micro-theme, geography and disaster management.
Afghanistan is one of the most earthquake-prone countries in the world.
Is the reason its location in a very active tectonic zone. It's located on the edge of the Eurasian plate, right near the boundary where the Indian plate is converging with it.
Imagine two giant landmasses constantly pushing against each other. That's what's happening there.
और इसकी geography इस problem को और compound कर देती है. The country is extremely mountainous, dominated by the Hindu Kush range,
This rugged terrain amplifies the risk of landslides that can be triggered by even moderate earthquakes.
often causing more damage than the shaking itself.
Exactly. The recent series of quakes have been concentrated in the Herat region, which indicates activity along the Herat fault.
So for your prelims, remember this deadly combination. Its location at a major plate boundary, plus its mountainous terrain.
Yes, this is what makes Afghanistan so vulnerable.
Let's practice the key geographical terms. Practicing. Eurasian plate, Indian plate, Hindu Kush, Herat fault.
In short, Afghanistan's high earthquake risk is a direct result of its location at a tectonic plate boundary and its mountainous terrain, which increases the secondary danger of landslides.
Now for something from the natural world, this is fascinating.
Snippet: Spider webs and stabilimenta.
Broad micro theme.
Environment and ecology.
This is about a specific type of spider called orb weavers.
Right.
These are the spiders that build those classic, beautiful, spiral wheel-shaped webs that you often see.
कभी इन वेब्स पर zigzag या disc shaped thick white silk decorations देखें.
Huh.
Those aren't mistakes or random patterns. They have a scientific name. Stabilimenta.
Yes, and scientists have several theories about their function. It's likely a multi-purpose tool.
Like what?
One theory is that they distract predators, like birds and wasps, making the spider in the center harder to spot.
Another theory is that they reflect UV light, which helps attract insects, their prey.
And a third idea is that they help adjust the web's tension, making it easier for the spider to detect vibrations from trapped prey.
Cool, na? So that little zigzag isn't just for decoration. It's a highly evolved tool for survival and hunting.
Exactly. Let's practice saying the term. Practicing?
Stabilimenta, or conspicuous silk decorations on orb weaver webs.
In short, stabilimenta on spider webs are complex, multifunctional structures serving purposes like predator distraction, prey attraction, and web tension management.
Moving to November 5th, back to Trump and tariffs, but this time from a legal angle.
Snippet. US tariffs and Supreme Court.
Broad micro-theme, international polity and law.
इसमें दो की legal acts हैं which give the US president the power to impose tariffs.
Okay.
First is the IEEPA, which stands for the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. This act gives the president broad authority to regulate international commerce during a declared national emergency.
And second is Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act. This is the one used for the steel and aluminium tariffs.
Yes, it allows the president to impose tariffs for national security reasons. This is a very broad and often controversial justification.
और इन सब के पीछे एक legal theory है, the unitary executive theory.
Right. This is a very expansive interpretation of presidential power. It asserts that the president has sole and complete authority over the entire executive branch, and Congress cannot limit this authority.
So these are the legal tools and theories that underpin the president's power to impose tariffs, but they're constantly being challenged in US courts as an overreach of executive power.
Correct. Let's practice saying the acts.
Practicing.
IEEPA and Section 232.
In short, the US president's authority to impose tariffs is based on specific laws like IEEPA and Section 232, backed by the controversial and expansive unitary executive theory.
Next up, Bill Gates' views on climate change. This is a very important perspective.
Snippet: Bill Gates and climate action.
Broad micro theme, environment.
Bill Gates has a very pragmatic and, some would say, controversial argument. He suggests that the global community should shift its focus from mitigation to adaptation.
Let's define these terms. Mitigation means efforts to cut greenhouse gas emissions to prevent climate change. Adaptation means building resilience to cope with the impacts of climate change that are already happening or are unavoidable.
For example, developing drought-resistant crops.
Exactly.
Q, why is he saying this?
Because he argues that the goal of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius is looking increasingly unlikely to be met. The current global narrative is heavily focused on mitigation, while adaptation receives less than 20% of all climate finance. He believes this is a dangerous imbalance.
Here's where it gets really interesting for India. India's official stance actually aligns very closely with Gates' view.
Right. The Economic Survey of 2024 emphasized that for a developing country like India, development and economic growth are the best insurance against climate impact.
A richer country is a more resilient country. So the core idea is, while we must continue to try and stop the damage, mitigation, we must also urgently prepare to live with the damage that's already locked in, adaptation.
Precisely. Let's practice the key terms. Practice saying,
Mitigation versus adaptation.
in short, Bill Gates and India both argue for a greater focus on climate adaptation, as relying solely on mitigation to meet the 1.5 degree C target is becoming unrealistic.
Now for a landmark case from Indian legal history. This is super important.
Snippet: Shah Bano verdict, 1985.
Broad micro-theme, Indian polity and social issues.
The case was Muhammad Ahmad Khan versus Shah Bano Begum. Shah Bano, a 62-year-old divorced Muslim woman, filed a case for maintenance from her husband.
The Supreme Court, in a landmark 1985 judgment, ruled that Section 125 of the CRPC, which provides for maintenance for divorced wives, applies to all citizens, including Muslim women, even after the iddat period.
This was a hugely progressive judgment. However, it led to a massive political controversy.
Right? The government at the time, under pressure, enacted the Muslim Women Protection of Rights on Divorce Act in 1986.
This act was widely seen as a move to nullify the SC verdict, as it restricted a husband's liability for maintenance only to the iddat period.
But the story doesn't end there.
No, it doesn't. In a brilliant judicial move, in the Daniel Latifi case of 2001, the Supreme Court upheld the constitutional validity of the 1986 Act but gave it a creative interpretation.
And what was that?
It said that the reasonable and fair provision mentioned in the Act means a provision for the woman's entire future, i.e., maintenance for life, which must be made by the husband within the iddat period.
This sequence is absolutely critical for your exam. The Shah Bano verdict, the 1986 Act to overturn it, and then the Daniel Latifi case that reinterpreted the Act to restore the spirit of the original verdict.
Exactly. Let's practice saying the case names in the correct order. Practicing.
Shah Bano case, 1986 Act, Daniel Latifi case.
In short, the legal journey from Shah Bano to Daniel Latifi showcases the complex interplay between the judiciary and the legislature on this sensitive issue of maintenance for Muslim women.
Now a look at an ongoing and tragic global conflict.
Snippet: Conflict in Sudan.
Broad micro-theme, international relations.
The conflict in Sudan is mainly a power struggle between two military factions.
On one side, you have the SAF, the Sudanese Armed Forces, which is the official national army, led by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan.
And on the other side, you have the RSF, or Rapid Support Forces, a powerful paramilitary group led by General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, also known as Hemedti.
A major flashpoint has been the city of El Fasher in the western Darfur region.
Yes, the RSF, which has its roots in the Darfur region, has been accused of targeting the non-Arab Masalit people in what many international observers are calling a campaign of ethnic cleansing.
The current conflict is a direct result of the power vacuum that was created after the ouster of the longtime dictator Omar al-Bashir in a popular uprising in 2019.
Right. The two generals, Burhan and Hemedti, who once collaborated to oust Bashir and then staged a coup together, are now fighting each other for ultimate control of the country.
Okay, let's get the names right. Practice saying.
SAF under General Burhan versus RSF under General Hemedti.
In short, the Sudan conflict is a brutal power struggle between the National Army, SAF, and a powerful paramilitary group, RSF, leading to a devastating humanitarian crisis, especially in the Darfur region.
Let's move to November 6th, an interview with a recent Nobel laureate.
Snippet: James Robinson interview, Nobel 2024.
Broad micro-theme, economy and social issues.
James Robinson, along with Deron Acemogalo and Simon Johnson, won the Nobel Prize in Economics for their groundbreaking work on how institutions, both political and economic, affect a nation's prosperity.
Their most famous book is Why Nations Fail.
In a recent interview, he gave his views on India. He made two key points.
First, he noted that while India's economic reforms in the 1990s led to growth, inequality has also increased. He also pointed out that barriers to inclusion, like the caste system, still pose a major challenge.
However, he also said something very optimistic.
Yes, he believes that India's democratic and often messy political model is more sustainable in the long run than China's top-down absolutism.
And on the US?
On the US, he said that political polarization is a deep structural problem and simply implementing something like a wealth tax won't fix the deeper institutional decay. Very nuanced views.
The key takeaway is his core thesis. The quality of a country's institutions is the most important factor for long-term prosperity.
More so than just specific economic policies.
Absolutely.
Great insight. Let's practice the core idea. Strong, inclusive institutions are the key to long-term prosperity.
In short, Nobel laureate James Robinson emphasizes that while India has inclusion challenges, its democratic model is more sustainable than China's, and that deep institutional problems plague both India and the US.
Next, a quick look at local elections in the US, which often have national importance.
Snippet: US elections local.
Broad micro-theme, international polity.
This is a great example of how local politics can have huge national implications. In California, voters passed Proposition 50.
This proposition is about redrawing electoral maps, a process known as redistricting or gerrymandering.
And how these maps are drawn can heavily impact which party controls the U.S. House of Representatives. Right. There were also some key wins for the Democratic Party in other states. They won the governorships in New Jersey and Virginia, which are often seen as bellwether states for national trends.
And in a notable local result from a while back, Zohram Mamdani, who identifies as a democratic socialist, was elected as the mayor of New York City, signaling a leftward shift in the party's urban base.
Exactly. So the takeaway is that local elections are not just about local issues. They act as indicators for national political trends and can directly shift the balance of power at the federal level through mechanisms like redistricting.
Okay, let's practice the key terms. Practice saying,
Redistricting, Prop 50, Democratic Socialist.
in short, recent US local elections showed key democratic gains and highlighted the importance of local issues like redistricting in shaping the larger national political landscape.
Back to space. This is a mind-boggling story.
Snippet. Supermassive black hole flare.
Broad micro-theme. Science and technology.
Astronomers have spotted the brightest flare ever recorded from a supermassive black hole.
Yes, it was as bright as 10 trillion suns and was located 10 billion light-years away. Absolutely staggering numbers.
What could cause such a massive explosion of energy?
The event is called a tidal disruption event, or TDE. This is what happens when a star gets too close to a supermassive black hole.
So the black hole's immense gravity exerts a much stronger pull on the near side of the star than on the far side.
Right. This difference in gravitational force, or tidal force, literally shreds the star apart.
Wow. As the star's material is torn apart, it forms a swirling disk around the black hole called an accretion disk. The intense friction and gravity in this disk heat the material to millions of degrees, causing it to emit an incredibly bright flare of radiation.
And where do you find these supermassive black holes?
Typically at the center of large galaxies, including our own Milky Way.
So, a star's violent death caused this spectacular cosmic light show.
Exactly. Let's practice the key term. Practice saying.
A tidal disruption event is when a star is shredded apart by a black hole's gravity.
In short, a recent incredibly bright cosmic flare was the result of a tidal disruption event, where a star was violently torn apart by a supermassive black hole at the center of a distant galaxy.
Now, a story about cultural heritage and international cooperation.
Snippet.
Broad micro-theme. Art and culture. Aya.
The Netherlands has returned a 3,500-year-old stone head of the pharaoh Thutmose III.
Thutmose III was one of the greatest pharaohs of the New Kingdom.
This artifact was looted from Egypt during the colonial era and was recently discovered in the city of Maastricht.
The return was done under the ethical guidelines of the 1970 UNESCO Convention on the means of prohibiting and preventing the illicit import, export, and transfer of ownership of cultural property.
That's a long name, but it's a very important international treaty.
It is. This act by the Netherlands is part of a growing global movement for the restitution of cultural artifacts to their countries of origin.
Yes, many European museums are facing increasing pressure to return items that were acquired under colonial rule.
So this is about correcting historical wrongs.
Precisely. Let's practice the key names. Practicing.
Pharaoh Thutmose III, UNESCO Convention 1970.
In short, the return of a pharaoh statue by the Netherlands to Egypt highlights the growing global trend of ethical restitution of cultural artifacts, guided by principles of the 1970 UNESCO Convention.
Moving to November 7th.
A deeper look at the crisis in Sudan.
Snippet.
Crisis in Sudan, deep dive.
Broad macro theme.
International relations.
Let's understand the historical roots of the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces.
The RSF actually originated from the infamous Janjaweed militias.
Right. These were Arab militias armed by the government of Omar al-Bashir in the early 2000s to suppress a rebellion in Darfur. They were known for their extreme brutality and were accused of carrying out a genocide.
The geography of the region is also key to understanding the conflict. It's not just a power struggle, it's a fight over resources. Both the SUF and the RSF want control over Sudan's strategic Red Sea coast,
which is vital for trade and naval power.
And the rich gold mines located in the Darfur region, which is the RSF's home turf.
The humanitarian situation is catastrophic. Famine has been officially declared in the Zamzam camp in Darfur, which hosts hundreds of thousands of displaced people.
And there are many external actors involved, including the UAE, which is said to back the RSF, and Egypt, which backs the SUF. Russia's Wagner Group is also involved, particularly around the gold mines.
This foreign intervention makes the conflict even more complex and harder to resolve. The takeaway is the direct link between the historical Janjaweed militias, the current RSF, and the ongoing fight for control over strategic resources.
Yes. Let's practice that connection. Practice saying
the RSF originated from the Janjaweed militias of the Darfur conflict.
In short, the Sudan crisis is rooted in historical ethnic conflicts, fueled by a modern-day struggle for control over strategic resources like gold mines and ports, and complicated by significant foreign intervention.
Let's turn back to Bihar's economy now.
Snippet. Bihar's economic growth.
Broad micro theme. Indian economy.
The economic data from Bihar presents a mixed and complex picture.
On one hand, Bihar's gross state domestic product, or GSDP, has doubled in real terms between 2011 and 2023. That's a very impressive growth rate.
However, there's a catch. During the same period, the gap in per capita income between Bihar and more developed states like Maharashtra and Gujarat has actually widened.
So, Bihar remains the poorest state in India in terms of per capita income.
Yes. For instance, Kerala's per capita income is 5 times that of Bihar's.
There is one surprising data point in manufacturing.
Bihar has actually bridged the gap with the national average in manufacturing value added. But this is partly due to its own very low base and a decline or stagnation in manufacturing in some other states.
So it's not an entirely positive story. The big picture conclusion is that while the overall GSDP growth is positive and should be acknowledged, it hasn't been inclusive enough to close the per capita income gap with the rest of the country.
Exactly. This remains the state's biggest economic challenge. Let's practice the core concept here. Practice saying
growth in GSDP versus the widening gap in per capita income.
In short, Bihar has shown strong GSDP growth, but this hasn't translated into closing the per capita income gap with richer states, highlighting the persistent challenge of inclusive development.
Next, a look behind the scenes of our democracy.
Snippet. Election scheduling factors.
Broad micro theme, Indian polity.
The Election Commission of India, or ECI, considers several important criteria before announcing election dates. It's a massive logistical exercise.
These factors include the weather, especially avoiding extreme heat or monsoon, major religious festivals, the agricultural cycle to ensure farmers can participate,
and school or college exam schedules, since schools are used as polling stations.
But the most critical factor, the one that often dictates the entire schedule, is the availability and movement of security forces.
Especially Central Armed Police Forces, or CAPF. This is particularly important for ensuring security in areas affected by left-wing extremism or those with a history of electoral violence.
Right. This is why elections in LWE-affected states like Chhattisgarh or Jharkhand are often held in multiple phases.
Correct. This multi-phase polling allows for the systematic movement of security forces from one area to another to sanitize the area and ensure that voters can cast their ballots safely and without fear.
So scheduling elections is a massive balancing act, weighing administrative, social, and above all, security considerations.
Precisely. Let's practice the main factors. Practice saying
Weather, festivals, exams, and security forces availability.
In short, the ECI schedules elections based on a complex set of factors, with the availability and strategic movement of security forces being a paramount consideration, especially in conflict-affected regions.
Now for an unusual human-wildlife conflict story from Japan.
Snippet. Bear attacks in Japan.
Broad micro-theme, environment.
Bear attacks are on the rise in Japan, which is a surprising trend for a highly developed country.
There are two main species involved. The large brown bears on the northern island of Hokkaido and the smaller Asiatic black bears on the main island of Honshu.
There are a couple of key reasons for this increase. The first is demographic. Japan has an aging and shrinking population, especially in rural areas.
This rural depopulation has led to villages being abandoned.
Right. The buffer zones between deep forests and towns have grown wild, bringing bears closer to the remaining human settlements.
And the second reason is climate change.
Yes, it has led to shortages of acorns and beech nuts, which are a primary food source for bears before they hibernate. When this natural food is scarce, the bears are forced to venture into human areas to find food, leading to more frequent and dangerous encounters.
So, it's a fascinating and tragic combination of demographic shifts and environmental pressures, creating a new kind of conflict.
Yes. Let's practice the two main causes. Practice saying
Rural depopulation and acorn shortage due to climate change.
In short, rising bear attacks in Japan are a direct consequence of both demographic shifts, rural depopulation, and environmental pressures, climate change-induced food shortages for the bears.
Let's discuss film censorship in India.
Snippet.
Film certification, Hal movie,
Broad micro theme.
governance and arts.
In India, film certification, which is often called censorship, is done by the Central Board of Film Certification, or CBFC.
This body was set up under the Cinematograph Act of 1952.
The CBFC has the power to order cuts or modifications in a film before it can be released to the public. This power is based on the reasonable restrictions mentioned in Article 19(2) of the Constitution.
Our fundamental right to freedom of speech and expression under Article 19(1)(a) is not absolute, an implementing body that applies the broad principles of Article 19(2) to the specific medium of cinema. It's a constant balancing act between artistic freedom and these constitutional restrictions.
Let's practice the legal basis for this. Practice saying
CBFC, under the Cinematograph Act of 1952, uses reasonable restrictions from Article 19(2).
In short, the CBFC certifies and sometimes censors films based on the Cinematograph Act with its powers derived from the reasonable restrictions on free speech outlined in Article 19(2) of the Constitution.
We are now on November 8th. First snippet, a very important concept in international relations.
Snippet, Trump's G2 framing.
Broad.
Micro theme, International relations.
The concept of a G2 refers to a hypothetical partnership between the United States and China as the two co-equal global powers who should manage the international order together.
The term was actually coined by the economist C. Fred Bergston way back in 2005.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The implication of a G2 world is that it signals a potential bypassing of traditional US alliances.
It suggests a world where Washington and Beijing make direct deals, potentially over the heads of allies like the European Union, Japan, or even multilateral forums like the Quad.
The Obama administration was sometimes seen as leaning towards this approach. However, Trump's first term, starting in 2017, officially labeled China a strategic rival, moving decisively away from the G2 idea. And now, there is speculation that he might be revisiting the G2 concept as a way to strike a grand bargain with China.
The key takeaway is that the G2 framing represents a monumental potential shift in US foreign policy, prioritizing a bilateral relationship with China over its long-standing multilateral alliances.
It's a very transactional worldview.
Precisely.
Let's practice saying the core concept. Practice saying?
G2 implies a US-China duopoly managing the global order.
In short, the G2 concept suggests a potential US foreign policy shift towards a direct power-sharing arrangement with China, which could sideline traditional allies and multilateral forums.
Next, a book recommendation with a powerful idea.
Snippet. Book.
The Burning Earth. Broad micro-theme. Environment and history.
The book is The Burning Earth by Sunil Amrit, who is a brilliant environmental historian.
The central theme of the book explores the history of human consumption through the lens of need versus greed.
It makes a powerful argument that post-colonial industrialization in many newly independent countries often mirrored the ecologically destructive patterns of the colonial era.
Right. This was driven by desperate haste for development at any cost, without considering the long-term environmental consequences.
The book also uses a very powerful term, slow violence, which was originally coined by the scholar Rob Nixon.
Yes. This refers to the delayed, gradual, and often invisible destruction caused by things like climate change, toxic waste, or deforestation.
It doesn't have the immediate shock and spectacle of a war, but its impact is just as devastating over time. A very thought-provoking concept.
It does. Let's practice the key term. Practice saying,
slow violence describes delayed, long-term, and often invisible environmental destruction.
In short, Sunil Amrit's The Burning Earth critiques the ecologically damaging model of post-colonial development and uses the concept of slow violence to describe long-term attritional environmental crises.
Let's look at some GST data now.
Snippet. State GST revenues.
Broad micro-theme.
Indian economy.
Here's a surprising and slightly concerning trend. The overall GST revenue share in India's GDP is currently around 5.5%.
This is actually lower than the share of the various taxes that was subsumed into GST before it was implemented in 2017.
Yes, that share was around 6.5%.
So from a tax to GDP ratio perspective, we haven't seen a big jump.
But the picture is very different across states. The GST regime has created clear winners and losers.
The northeastern states like Mizoram, Nagaland, and Sikkim have been major gainers. Their tax revenue share relative to their GSTP has increased post-GST, mainly because they are consuming states.
And on the other hand, several states, including some large manufacturing ones, have been losers.
Yes. States like Jammu and Kashmir, Punjab, Chhattisgarh, and Karnataka have seen the biggest drop in their tax revenue as a percentage of their GSTP.
So the conclusion is that the transition to GST has had a very varied and unequal fiscal impact on different states, which is a key issue in India's fiscal federalism.
Yes. Let's practice the overall trend. Practice saying,
overall GST to GDP share is lower than pre-GST taxes, with non-eastern states gaining and some larger states losing.
In short, the implementation of GST has resulted in a varied fiscal outcome for Indian states, with northeastern states benefiting, while some other states have seen a relative decline in their tax revenue share.
Now for some cutting-edge biology. This is amazing.
Snippet, brain atlases.
Broad micro-theme.
Science and technology.
This refers to a massive international research effort focused on mapping the development of every single cell in the human brain and comparing it with the mouse brain over its entire lifespan.
What is the significance of this?
It's like creating a Google Maps for the brain. By creating these detailed atlases, scientists can identify the specific genes that are responsible for creating different types of brain cells and how they connect with each other.
This has huge implications for medicine. Absolutely. It could help us better understand the genetic and cellular bases of complex neurological and psychiatric conditions like schizophrenia, autism, Alzheimer's, and depression.
By knowing what a healthy brain map looks like, we can better identify what goes wrong in these diseases. So it's like creating a detailed blueprint of the brain.
Exactly, to understand how it's built and what goes wrong, which could lead to new treatments. Let's practice the purpose. Practice saying,
brain atlases help identify genes for specific brain cells to understand diseases like schizophrenia and autism.
In short, brain atlases are incredibly detailed maps of brain cell development that are crucial for understanding the genetic and cellular roots of complex neurological and psychiatric disorders.
Next, an important topic on animal welfare and urban governance.
Snippet, stray dogs and ABC rules.
Broad micro-theme. governance and social issues.
The new rules governing this issue are the Animal Birth Control ABC Rules 2023. They were issued under the umbrella of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act of 1960.
There is a key and very intentional change in terminology in these new rules.
Yes, they refer to these animals as community animals, not strays. This is to encourage a sense of shared responsibility among the residents of a locality.
And the mandate of the rules is clear.
Yes, the policy is to sterilize and vaccinate the dogs, and then they must be returned to the same location from which they were picked up. The rules also make resident welfare associations, RWAs, responsible for arranging designated feeding spots to avoid conflict.
However, a Supreme Court order from a few years ago adds an important nuance.
Right. The court allowed for the removal of dogs from certain sensitive zones, like hospital premises, airports, and schools, to designated animal shelters. So the return to same locality rule is not absolute in all cases.
Let's practice the key term. And mandate. Practice saying.
The rules refer to them as community animals and mandate sterilization and return to the same location.
In short, the new ABC rules promote a sterilization and return policy for community animals with shared responsibility for feeding, but allow for their removal from specific sensitive areas as per a Supreme Court directive.
Moving to November 10th, let's start with a health warning that we often ignore.
Snippet. Indoor air quality, IAQ.
Broad micro-theme, health and environment.
We talk a lot about outdoor air pollution and the AQI, but scientific studies have shown that indoor air can be 2 to 5 times more polluted than the air outside.
This is a major health concern.
What are the common indoor pollutants?
One of the most dangerous is benzene. It comes from paints, varnishes, and many common cleaning products. And it is a known carcinogen, meaning it can cause cancer.
Then there's carbon monoxide, which can be released from things like incense sticks, agarbattis, and gas stoves.
And of course, PM 2.5 particles are also present indoors. A recent comprehensive study highlighted benzene as the most dangerous of these common indoor pollutants, with a clear and established link to leukemia, a type of blood cancer.
The key takeaway is that we need to be as conscious of our indoor air quality as we are of the outdoor AQI.
Yes, simple things like ensuring good ventilation can make a big difference. Let's practice the common pollutants. Practice saying,
Indoor pollutants include benzene, carbon monoxide, and PM 2.5.
benzene posing a significant and proven cancer risk.
Back to Bihar politics and a look at one of its most consequential figures.
Snippet, Lalu Prasad in Bihar politics.
Broad micro-theme, Indian political history.
Lalu Prasad Yadav represents a definitive era in Bihar's politics. He was the first chief minister of Bihar to be born after independence, taking office in 1990.
He was a product of the JP movement of 1974, which was a major anti-corruption and anti-authoritarian movement.
His entire political platform was built on the plank of social justice. He successfully consolidated the OBC and Muslim vote bank, creating a formidable MY, Muslim Yadav.
He was the key figure in the aggressive implementation of Mandal Commission politics in the state, which empowered the backward classes like never before.
However, his long tenure was also marred by allegations of corruption, most famously the fodder scam.
The allegations in this scam eventually forced him to resign as chief minister in 1997. In a famous and unprecedented political move, he installed his wife, Rabri Devi, who had no prior political experience, as his successor.
His career encapsulates the complex and often contradictory story of modern Bihar, the powerful rise of backward class politics on one hand and the challenges of corruption and governance on the other.
A perfect summary. Let's practice the timeline. Practicing.
Product of JP movement, became CM in 1990, implemented Mandal politics, resigned in 1997 due to the fodder scam.
In short, Lalu Prasad Yadav's political career defined an era of social justice politics in Bihar, marked by the unprecedented empowerment of backward classes, but also tainted by major corruption scandals.
Next, a strategic development in Central Asia with big implications for India.
Snippet. India's ANI Air Base withdrawal.
Broad micro-theme, international relations and security.
The ANI Air Base, also known as Gisar, is located in Tajikistan. Its location is what makes it so valuable. It's just 20 kilometers from Tajikistan's capital, Dushanbe.
It has immense strategic value for India. It is very close to the Wakhan corridor in Afghanistan, which is a narrow strip of land that gives India a potential land route to Central Asia, bypassing Pakistan.
The airbase is also geographically close to Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and the border with China's Xinjiang province.
India invested around $80 million in renovating and upgrading the Soviet-era airbase after 2002. However, in 2022, India had to withdraw its assets and personnel from INE.
Reportedly due to strong pressure from both Russia and China, who did not want an Indian military footprint in their backyard.
This withdrawal is a significant setback for India's strategic presence and Connect Central Asia policy. It's a contrast to our success in the Indian Ocean,
where India has successfully built an airstrip and a jetty in Agalega Island, Mauritius, strengthening our presence there.
Yes, let's practice the location and its significance. Practice saying,
INE airbase is in Tajikistan, near the Wakhan corridor.
In short, India's forced withdrawal from the strategic INE airbase in Tajikistan, likely due to Russian and Chinese pressure, marks a significant challenge to its geopolitical outreach in Central Asia.
Let's look at the growing naval power of our northern neighbor.
Snippet. China's Fujian carrier.
Broad micro theme, international relations and defense.
The Fujian is China's third aircraft carrier.
But it's a massive technological game changer because it's the first one to be designed and built entirely in China.
And more importantly, it's equipped with EMALs. EMALs stands for Electromagnetic Aircraft Launch System.
What's the big deal about EMALs? China's first two carriers, the Liaoning and the Shandong, use a ski jump launch system, which is less powerful.
Right. EMALs uses powerful electromagnets to launch aircraft. This allows for launching much heavier aircraft with more fuel and more weapons and at a much faster rate.
It's the same technology used on the US Navy's newest carriers. The Fujian is expected to carry the new J-35 stealth fighter,
which is China's answer to the F-35 and an upgraded version of the J-15 fighter. This combination of a modern carrier with an advanced launch system and stealth aircraft significantly boosts China's naval aviation and power projection capabilities far from its shores.
So the Fujian carrier is a major technological leap that puts the Chinese Navy in a new league.
Absolutely. Let's practice the key technology. Practicing.
EMALS, or Electromagnetic Aircraft Launch System, allows launching heavier aircraft faster.
In short, China's third aircraft carrier, the Fujian, represents a major technological advancement with its EMALS launch system significantly enhancing its naval power projection capabilities in the Indo-Pacific.
Now, for a fascinating concept that connects mathematics and biology.
Snippet. Turing patterns.
Broad micro-theme.
Science and technology.
This concept originates from a groundbreaking 1952 paper by the brilliant British mathematician Alan Turing.
Fusion mechanism. He proposed, using mathematical equations, that the interaction of just two chemicals, an activator and an inhibitor, spreading at different rates, can spontaneously create complex and regular patterns.
Like stripes and spots from a uniform state.
Exactly. You can see these Turing patterns everywhere in nature. The spots on a leopard, the stripes on a zebra, the intricate patterns on a boxfish.
Or even the branching patterns of some plants are all thought to be generated by this simple underlying mathematical mechanism.
Cool, na? So a simple mathematical model can explain some of the most beautiful and complex patterns in the biological world.
Exactly. Let's practice the mechanism. Practice saying,
Turing patterns are formed by a reaction-diffusion mechanism involving an activator and an inhibitor chemical.
In short, Turing patterns are complex natural patterns like animal stripes and spots that can be elegantly explained by a simple mathematical model of interacting chemicals proposed by the genius Alan Turing.
Now for November 11th, a foundational story of modern biology.
Snippet, James Watson and DNA.
Broad micro theme, science and technology.
James Watson and Francis Crick are famously credited with discovering the double helix structure of DNA in 1953. This is unarguably one of the most important scientific discoveries of the 20th century.
However, it's absolutely crucial to remember that a key piece of data they used to build their model was called Photo 51.
This was a remarkably clear X-ray crystallography image of a DNA molecule, and it was taken by another brilliant scientist, Rosalind Franklin.
Her contribution was vital, but she was not recognized in the Nobel Prize.
The significance of the double helix model was immense. It elegantly explained two fundamental mysteries of life.
First, how DNA could replicate itself perfectly through the specific base pairing, adenine A always with thymine T, and cytosine C always with guanine G.
And second, how this replication allows genetic information to be passed on from one generation to the next, which is the basis of heredity.
So the story of the DNA discovery is also a complex story about collaboration, competition, and the importance of recognizing the contributions of all scientists involved, especially women in science.
A very important point. Let's practice the key contributors and the crucial piece of data. Practicing.
Watson and Crick, using Rosalind Franklin's Photo 51, discovered the double helix structure.
In short, the discovery of the DNA double helix by Watson and Crick, which was critically dependent on Rosalind Franklin's data, revolutionized our understanding of genetics, heredity, and the very code of life.
Next, let's look at how India is approaching AI regulation.
Snippet, Gov's AI Guidelines.
Broad micro theme, science and technology governments.
The Indian government's current framework for regulating artificial intelligence is guided by the core principle of do no harm.
As of now, the government has decided not to introduce a standalone comprehensive AI law. Instead, the plan is to use existing laws like the IT Act and the new Digital Personal Data Protection (DPDP) Act to regulate different aspects of AI.
However, there are some new proposals on the table to strengthen this framework.
Yes, these include creating an India-specific risk assessment framework to classify AI models based on their potential for harm, building a national database of AI-related incidents,
and mandating the clear labeling of synthetic content, for example, through digital watermarking on AI-generated images and videos.
The government is also considering a system of graded liability. This is an important concept. It means the level of legal responsibility for an AI system's actions would be based on its level of risk and its specific function.
So, a high-risk AI system, like one used in healthcare, would have stricter liability norms than a low-risk one.
Exactly. The approach is cautious, adaptive, and sector-specific, rather than bringing in a single heavy-handed law that might stifle innovation.
Precisely. Let's practice the core principle. Practice saying.
The AI guidelines are based on the do no harm principle and will use existing laws like the IT Act and the DPDP Act.
In short, India's evolving approach to AI regulation is based on a do-no-harm principle, leveraging existing laws while proposing new measures like risk assessment, incident databases, and a system of graded liability.
Now, for a new and innovative initiative for forest conservation.
Snippet. Tropical Forest Forever Facility.
Broad micro theme, environment.
The TFFF, or Tropical Forest Forever Facility, was launched on the sidelines of the COP30 climate summit in Brazil. It's a very ambitious plan to create a $125 billion fund dedicated to forest conservation.
Here's how its mechanism is different and innovative. Unlike carbon credits, which are often criticized for just offsetting emissions made elsewhere, the TFFF will directly pay nations to keep their forests standing.
And the payments will be made not from the principal amount but from the investment returns generated by the fund's massive corpus.
Right. It's like an endowment fund for forests.
However, there are some valid concerns being raised.
Yes. First, the facility is not under the official UN FCCC framework. This could dilute the legal obligations of developed nations under the Paris Agreement. Second, its funding for conservation is dependent on the returns from financial markets, which introduces a volatility risk.
So a market crash could reduce the funds available for conservation. It's an innovative financial model, but it comes with its own set of challenges.
Correct. Let's practice the unique mechanism. Practice saying,
The TFF pays nations to keep forests standing, funded by investment returns, unlike carbon credits.
in short, the TFFF is a new, large-scale fund that uses a novel financial mechanism to pay countries directly for forest conservation, but its independence from the UNFCCC and exposure to market risks are potential concerns.
Now for a prestigious literary award.
Snippet,
Booker Prize,
broad micro-theme.
Arts and Culture.
The Booker Prize is one of the most prestigious literary awards in the world for a work of fiction.
The key eligibility criteria are that the book must be written in English and published in the UK or Ireland.
It has an interesting history. It was founded in 1969. Initially, it was only open to authors from the Commonwealth countries, the Republic of Ireland and Zimbabwe.
The major change happened in 2014, when the prize was opened up to all nationalities, as long as their book was written in English and published in the UK.
It's also important not to confuse it with the International Booker Prize.
Right.
That's a separate but related award.
Right. The International Booker Prize is given for a work of fiction that has been translated into English and published in the UK or Ireland.
And the prize money for the International Award is split equally between the author and the translator.
So, two separate Booker Prizes to remember. One for original fiction written in English and one for fiction that has been translated into English.
Exactly. Let's practice the distinction. Practicing.
The Booker Prize is for original English fiction, while the International Booker Prize is for translated fiction.
In short, the Booker Prize is a prestigious award for English language fiction published in the UK, Ireland, now open to all nationalities, and is distinct from the International Booker Prize, which honors translated works.
Next, a term from the world of US online politics.
Snippet. Groypers.
Broad micro theme. International polity and society.
The Groypers, or the Groyper Army, are a white nationalist and far-right group in the United States.
They are primarily followers of a far-right political commentator named Nick Fuentes.
Their symbol is the Groyper, which is a cartoon image of a fat, winking toad. It's a variation of the more famous Pepe the Frog meme.
Which has also been associated with the far-right.
Their ideology is vehemently anti-immigration, anti-Semitic, and anti-feminist. They are known for their online activities, where they often engage in coordinated trolling campaigns.
And for their attempts to disrupt mainstream conservative events, which they believe are not extreme enough.
So it's a term that represents a newer, more online-savvy, and arguably more radical generation of the American far-right.
That's a good way to put it. Let's practice the identity. Practice saying.
Groypers are a white nationalist group, followers of Nick Fuentes, and use a toad meme as their symbol.
In short, Groypers are a white nationalist, far-right group in the US, known for their online presence, their leader Nick Fuentes, and their anti-immigration, anti-feminist ideology.